Hey guys, tonight we're stepping back, way back, to a time of longships and legends, of fierce warriors and epic sagas. But we're not going to focus on the glorious raids or the romanticized adventures. Instead, we're going to pull back the rough wool curtain and peek into the daily lives of those who called the Viking settlements home. Imagine the biting wind whipping across your face, the pervasive smell of wood smoke and unwashed wool, and the constant, gnawing worry about where your next meal will come from. This isn't a fantasy epic. It's a stark, unvarnished look at how Viking settlements were really full of misery. And let's be real, if you were actually there, you probably wouldn't survive past Tuesday. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Also, drop a comment below and let me know where you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You wake, not to the gentle sound of an alarm clock, but to the chill of the pre-dawn air seeping through the cracks of the longhouse. Your bed is a simple mattress, lined with straw, shared with siblings, maybe even a few pets seeking warmth. The scent of stale smoke, damp earth, and unwashed bodies permeates the air, a constant companion in this cramped, communal living space. As your eyes adjust to the darkness, you can vaguely make out the silhouettes of your family, still huddled under coarse wool blankets, their breaths steaming in the cold. There is no central heating, no instant coffee, no quick social media scrolling to start the day. Your first thought is probably of the cold, and then, almost immediately, of food. A common historical fact is that while feuds were a prevalent feature of Viking society, there were also legal and social mechanisms, like the Thing assemblies and the system of Vergild, designed to prevent them from spiraling out of control and to offer alternatives to violence. However, these mechanisms were not always successful, and personal honor often trumped formal legal processes. Your muscles ache even before you fully wake. A testament to yesterday's relentless work. Perhaps you spent hours mending fishing nets, or chopping wood, or tending the few crops that clung to the barren soil. Life here in the Nordic lands was a relentless cycle of physical labor, dictated by the harsh rhythms of nature. You struggled to your feet, straw rustling beneath you, and pulled on your tunic and coarse trousers, thick layers of wool that offered little protection against the bitter cold. Shoes, if you were lucky enough to have decent leather shoes, felt like a luxury. Many people simply wrapped their feet in cloth or animal skin. The violence is not always external, even within your own settlement. Disputes can arise between families, between individuals, inheritance, land boundaries, perceived slights, drunken arguments. These can all lead to internal conflicts that, if not resolved, can splinter a community and weaken its ability to survive external threats. The strength of your kin is your greatest asset, and internal strife is a dangerous weakness, making your own neighbors potential adversaries. The longhouse, your home, was a feat of practicality and necessity. Its thick walls, often made of earth or wood, were designed to retain what little warmth the central heating provided. Smoke, a constant presence, curls upward, eventually finding its way out through a smoke hole in the roof, though much of it lingers, stinging your eyes and coating everything in a fine layer of soot. This is where your family eats, sleeps, works, and gathers. Privacy is a foreign concept. Every cough, every whisper, every movement is shared. Imagine trying to have a private conversation with your lover when your entire extended family, and maybe a cow, are within earshot. That certainly adds a unique challenge to relationship building. A little-known detail about Viking feuds is the concept of holmgang, a formal duel that offered a way to settle disputes without escalating into a full-blown blood feud. Two individuals could agree to fight to the death or first blood, often on a small island or a designated area, with witnesses present. While brutal, it was a recognized legal mechanism to resolve certain grievances and prevent wider bloodshed, offering a controlled outlet for vengeance and honor. However, it was still a desperate measure and not always available or agreed upon by both parties. Your first job of the day is usually to tend the fire. The embers from last night's fire are carefully rekindled, a precious commodity in a world where warmth means survival. You add wood, listening to the satisfying crackle of the wood as the flames begin to dance, casting shimmering shadows on the faces of your waking family. The warmth, when it finally arrived, was a small but profound comfort. It was a gathering place, a place to cook, to dry clothes, and to tell stories as the long, dark evenings drew in. The academic debate still rages about the precise role of feuds in Viking society. Were they primarily a destabilizing force that ultimately weakened communities and contributed to their decline, or were they a necessary, albeit brutal, mechanism for maintaining order and dispensing justice in the absence of a strong, centralized authority? Scholars continue to analyze sagas, archaeological evidence, and legal codes to understand the complex interplay of honor, law, and violence in shaping the social fabric of Viking communities. Breakfast was simple, almost always a variation of porridge made from oats or barley, with perhaps a few dried berries added if the harvest was good. Meat was a rarity, reserved for special occasions or after a successful hunt. You ate quickly, driven more by necessity than pleasure, the coarse texture of the grain filling your stomach with a meager sense of fullness. There was no time for leisurely meals. The day's work began almost immediately. The impact of feuds on daily life is profound and pervasive. You cannot travel freely for fear of ambush on lonely roads or in dense forests. You cannot trust outsiders for fear of betrayal or being caught in a crossfire. Your focus is constantly divided between the demands of survival, farming, fishing, maintaining your home, and the need to protect your family from the next act of vengeance. It drains resources, both human and material, diverting energy from productive activities. A community embroiled in a long-standing feud is a weakened community, vulnerable to external threats, to famine, and to disease. Outside, the landscape was harsh and beautiful, but also relentlessly challenging. The soil was thin, rocky, and often frozen for much of the year. Farming was a constant struggle against the elements. You might spend hours plowing the soil with a simple plow, a crude plow that barely scratches the surface, or carefully removing rocks from a field that seems to produce more rocks than crops. The growing season is short, a frantic race against time to harvest enough food from the soil to last through the harsh winter months. This constant agricultural struggle is a common historical fact that is often overshadowed by images of Viking raiders. Most Vikings were, in fact, farmers and fishermen, tied to the land and the sea for survival. If you were a man, your days might involve tending livestock, sheep, goats, cattle, maybe a pig or two, or maintaining the longhouse, mending fences, or making tools. Woodworking was an important skill. Every axe handle, every bowl, every plank for a boat had to be meticulously shaped by hand. You might also be involved in hunting or fishing, activities that were less about sport and more about putting food on the table. Imagine spending hours on a small, open boat in the cold North Sea, struggling with the waves and the cold wind, just for the chance to catch a few cod. That made your morning commute surprisingly luxurious. The sagas, while often glorifying the exploits of warriors and the pursuit of honor, also frequently depict the tragic consequences of feuds, showing how they could destroy families, lead to endless cycles of violence, and ultimately bring ruin to entire lineages. They serve as a grim reminder that the pursuit of honor, when taken to its extreme, could be a destructive force, eroding the very fabric of society, turning neighbor against neighbor, kin against kin. It's like watching a reality TV show where everyone is constantly trying to one-up each other, but with actual swords and no commercial breaks, and the elimination is permanent. If you were a woman, your work was equally demanding, though often more confined to the longhouse and its surroundings. You were responsible for food preparation, often a time-consuming process that involved grinding grain, kneading dough, and cooking over an open fire. Textile production was another mammoth task, from shearing sheep to spinning wool to weaving it into cloth. Every garment your family wore was the result of countless hours of meticulous labor. You also preserved food, drying fish, salting meat, fermenting milk to ensure there was enough food when fresh supplies were scarce. Childcare, of course, was a constant, demanding task, often done concurrently with other work. The concept of free time as we know it simply did not exist. The constant threat of violence also shapes your interactions with strangers. Every longship that appears on the horizon, every traveler who approaches your settlement, is viewed with suspicion. Are they traders, seeking peaceful exchange, or are they raiders, seeking plunder, or perhaps enemies seeking vengeance from a past conflict? You must always be prepared to defend your home, your family, your life, knowing that violence can erupt at any moment, from any direction. Even the simplest tasks were fraught with difficulty. Fetching water meant a trek to a nearby well or stream, often through snow or mud, carrying heavy buckets of water back home. There was no running water, no indoor plumbing. Waste disposal was rudimentary, contributing to the pervasive stench and, more importantly, the spread of disease. A little-known detail is that Viking settlements often had surprisingly sophisticated waste management systems for their time, including designated toilets and even rudimentary sewer systems, although sanitation standards were far from modern. Even if you are not directly involved in a feud, the violence can spill over, claiming innocent lives. A stray arrow, a misplaced blow, a mistaken identity. These can turn a peaceful day into a tragedy, drawing you into a conflict you never sought. The arbitrary nature of violence, its sudden, unpredictable eruption, adds another layer of terror to your daily existence. Tool maintenance was important. Your axe, your knife, your hammer. These were extensions of your survival abilities. You spent time sharpening your blades, repairing handles, and even forging new tools if you had the skills of a blacksmith. Metal was precious, often acquired through trade or, for the more adventurous, through plunder. The sound of hammers hitting anvils was a familiar sound in many settlements, a rhythm of creation and necessity. The sounds of violence, though often brief, are chilling the clash of steel. The shouts of men, the screams of the injured, the mournful cries of the bereaved. These sounds echo in the cold Norse air, a grim soundtrack to the misery that permeates your settlement. You learn to recognize them, to react instinctively, to seek shelter, to protect your loved ones, to prepare for the worst. Community was everything. You live in a small, close-knit settlement, often isolated from other settlements by vast stretches of wilderness or dangerous seas. Everyone relies on each other. If a neighbor's harvest fails, it affects the whole community. If a longboat is being built, everyone who can afford it contributes. Disputes, when they arise, are often resolved through community gatherings called things, where laws are read and decisions are made. This system, while seemingly democratic, can also lead to long-running feuds, a subject we'll go into later. And as the sun sets on another day in the Viking settlement, casting long shadows across the fields and long houses, you lay down your weary body, covered in dust and sweat, your muscles screaming in protest. You understand, with chilling clarity, how Viking settlements were really full of misery, especially when your life was defined by the constant threat of feuds and violence. It was not just an external danger, but an internal cancer, consuming communities from within, where every moment endured was a testament to your unyielding will, and every day was a gamble with your very life, constantly shadowed by the threat of bloodshed. Education, as we understand it, is non-existent. Children learn by doing, by watching adults, and by participating in daily tasks from a very young age. Boys learn to hunt, fish, and fight. Girls learn to manage the household, spin, and weave. Storytelling is vital, not just for entertainment, but also for transmitting history, law, and cultural values. Sagas, epics, and myths were passed down orally, shaping the worldview of each new generation. Imagine your entire historical record depending on someone's memory, passed down around a smoky fire. That certainly makes you appreciate Wikipedia. You've battled the insidious, gnawing threat of famine, feeling your body waste away and your mind fraying at the edges as winter relentlessly consumed your meager stores. You've endured the cramped, unsanitary conditions of the longhouse and the pervasive threat of disease and death, those unseen killers that stalk every Viking settlement. You've felt your life consumed by the relentless, back-breaking reality of brutal labor, from dawn till dusk, the constant demand on your physical and mental reserves. You've even faced the volatile, unpredictable dangers of feuds and violence, where a single insult could plunge your life into a terrifying cycle of vengeance. But even if you manage to survive all these external and internal threats, even if you are born free, your existence in a Viking settlement is still fundamentally shaped by a rigid social structure, a hierarchy that dictates your opportunities, your freedoms, and your very worth. And for many, this meant a life not of glorious independence, but of servitude, bound by the invisible chains of a system that placed some at the very bottom, the thralls, whose lost freedom defined their every miserable moment. This pervasive presence of social hierarchy, with thralls forming a significant and exploited class, was a common historical fact. underpinning much of Viking society and its economic expansion as the sun begins to set, tinting the sky in the shades of orange and purple. You gather inside the longhouse again. The air, though still smoky, feels warmer now, filled with the aroma of dinner, perhaps a stew simmering on the fire, or dried fish being pickled. This is a time for family, for sharing the day's events, for storytelling. The flickering firelight casts dancing shadows on the earthen walls, creating an intimate, almost hypnotic atmosphere. Yet even in these relatively peaceful moments, the underlying stress of survival was always present. Winter loomed large, a specter of cold and hunger. The sea, though it provided food, also threatened to take lives. Raiding, though it promised wealth and glory, also carried the risk of death or serious injury. The concept of retirement as we know it was alien. You worked until your body gave out, or until you were no longer able. You waked, perhaps not in the comfort of a family longhouse, but in a colder, less inviting corner, a space often shared with livestock or other unfortunate souls. Your bed is even rougher, your blankets thinner, offering little defense against the pervasive chill. Your first task of the day isn't to tend your own fire or prepare your own meal, but to serve others. You are a thrall, a slave in the Norse world, and your existence is defined by relentless labor, absolute obedience, and the constant, chilling reminder of your utter lack of freedom. Your life is not your own, it is property, a commodity to be used, abused, and discarded at the whim of your owner. Imagine being on call 24/7, but instead of a smartphone, your only notification is a shouted command, and your only payment is continued existence, utterly devoid of dignity or choice. It certainly makes your worst boss seem like a benevolent overlord. The average life expectancy was short, brutal by modern standards. Infant mortality was high, and many did not survive childhood. Those who survived faced countless challenges: disease, accidents, violence, and the physical wear and tear of a demanding life. If you reached your 40s or 50s, you were considered an elder, a storehouse of wisdom and experience, but also likely to be suffering from the aches and pains of a hard life. Scholarly debate rages on about the exact average life expectancy of an individual in the Viking Age, with estimates varying depending on factors such as region, social status, and access to resources. But all agree that it was considerably lower than today. Your day begins before anyone else's and ends long after. You are the first to rise, to fetch water from the icy well, to tend to the animals, to clean the longhouse, to rekindle the embers and prepare the meager breakfast for your masters. Your hands are perpetually chapped and calloused, your back a constant ache from the moment you stir until you finally collapse at night. You eat what you are given, often the scraps or the simplest fare, coarse gruel, a few dried fish bones, and you sleep when you are permitted, exhausted by the relentless demands placed upon you. There's no room for complaint, no opportunity for rest until your tasks are complete. And even then, your rest is often disturbed by the needs of the household or the watchful eye of an overseer. Sleep, when it finally came, was deep but often interrupted. The sounds of the longhouse, the movement of livestock, the snores of family members, the crackling of a dying fire were constant. There were no quiet, dark bedrooms, no soft mattresses. You drifted off to sleep, perhaps dreaming of a bountiful harvest, a successful raid, or simply a day without the stinging cold. This is your life, the life of a Viking, a constant dance on the edge of survival, where glory is a fleeting whisper over the roar of the wind and the relentless demands of the land. And as you fall deeper into sleep, you can almost feel the rough wool on your skin, smell the smoke in your hair, and hear the distant howl of the wind outside your mud-walled longhouse. You've felt the biting cold of the pre-dawn air, the pervasive smell of wood smoke, and the constant, gnawing worry about where your next meal will come from. You've experienced the relentless cycle of physical labor that defines your days in the harsh Norse landscape. But the misery of Viking life isn't just about the external forces of nature or the demands of the land. It's also deeply embedded in the very heart of your existence, the longhouse. This communal dwelling, while a marvel of practicality and necessity, is also a cramped, unsanitary, and often suffocating space, a breeding ground for disease and discomfort, where privacy is a foreign concept and every aspect of your life is shared with a multitude of others, including your livestock. This communal living in longhouses, often shared with animals, was a common historical fact, defining the daily existence of most Vikings. The reasons for becoming a thrall are varied and often tragic, a testament to the brutal realities of the Viking Age. You might have been captured during a raid on a foreign land, torn from your homeland and family, brought across the treacherous seas as plunder, a living spoil of war. Or perhaps you were born into servitude, your parents and grandparents before you having been thralls, inheriting their bondage as your birthright. Debt could also lead to thraldom. If you couldn't pay what you owed, you might be forced to sell yourself or your children into slavery, a desperate act to avoid starvation. Famine, too, could drive desperate families to sell their own into bondage, simply to survive a harsh winter, trading freedom for a chance at a few more meager meals. It's a stark reminder that freedom was a precious commodity, easily lost to the whims of war, fate, or economic hardship. You stir, not to the gentle chime of an alarm clock, but to the sounds of the longhouse itself, the lowing of a cow from the animal stalls at one end, the restless shifting of sheep, the snorts of a pig, all mingle with the snores of your family members and the distant crackle of the central hearth. The air, already thick with stale smoke from the fire, is now heavy with the mingled scents of human bodies, animal waste, damp earth, and unwashed wool. It's a pervasive odor, a constant companion that clings to your clothes, your hair, your very skin, a grim reminder of your cramped, unhygienic living conditions. Imagine trying to sleep in a barn that's also your living room, and your bathroom, and everyone else's bedroom, all at once. It certainly makes your worst roommate seem like a dream. Your clothing is simple, rough, and often patched, a clear visual marker of your status. You own nothing, not even the clothes on your back, beyond what your master provides. Your movements are restricted. You cannot leave the settlement without permission, and any attempt to escape would be met with severe punishment, perhaps even death, serving as a grim warning to others. Your life is entirely at the mercy of your owners, their whims and their needs dictating your every action, every breath. You are a tool, a piece of property, and your existence is solely for their benefit. Your bed is a simple, straw-filled pallet, often shared with siblings, or perhaps even a few farm animals seeking warmth from the pervasive cold. There's no soft mattress, no clean sheets, no private space to retreat to. You sleep in your day clothes, layers of rough wool that offer little true comfort. When you wake, your body aches, not just from yesterday's labor, but from the hard surface beneath you and the constant pressure of other bodies pressed close for warmth. The straw rustles and crunches beneath you, a constant backdrop to your restless sleep. A common historical fact is that thralls formed a significant portion of the population in Viking society, particularly in the early Viking Age. They were integral to the economy, performing much of the heavy labor in agriculture, household chores, and even some specialized crafts. Their labor was a fundamental source of wealth for their owners, contributing directly to the prosperity of Viking settlements. The longhouse, your home, is a marvel of practicality, designed to retain what little heat the central hearth provides. Its walls are thick, often made of turf or timber, and its roof is usually thatched or covered with turf, providing insulation against the brutal Norse winters. But this very design, while essential for warmth, also creates a dark, smoky, and poorly ventilated environment. Smoke, a constant presence, curls upwards from the central fire, eventually finding its way out through a smoke hole in the roof, though much of it lingers, stinging your eyes, coating everything in a fine layer of soot, and contributing to chronic respiratory problems. The work you perform is often the most arduous, dangerous, and undesirable. You might be tasked with clearing new land, a back-breaking job of removing stones and stumps from the rocky soil, your hands raw and bleeding. You might be sent to the forests to fell trees and haul heavy timber back to the settlement, or to the bogs to cut turf for fuel, your body aching from the cold and the constant exertion. In the longhouse, you are responsible for the most unpleasant chores, cleaning out the animal stalls, disposing of human waste, grinding grain for hours on end with a hand mill, your muscles screaming in protest. There's no dignity in the labor, only the relentless demand for its completion, driven by the ever-present threat of the whip. Privacy is a foreign concept, utterly non-existent. Every cough, every whispered word, every movement is shared with your entire extended family, and often with your livestock. There are no separate rooms, no doors to close, no quiet corners to retreat to. Imagine trying to have a private conversation with your significant other, or simply a moment of quiet reflection when your entire household, including a cow and a few chickens, is within earshot. It certainly adds a unique challenge to relationship building and personal space. The treatment of thralls varied greatly depending on the individual master. Some might be relatively benevolent, providing adequate food and shelter, seeing their thralls as valuable assets to be maintained and kept healthy, like a prized piece of livestock. Others could be cruel and abusive, inflicting physical punishment, denying food, or working their thralls to death through sheer exhaustion. There was little legal recourse for a thrall. Their master's word was law, and their life held little value in the eyes of society beyond their utility. Imagine being completely dependent on the mood swings of your boss, but your boss also owns you and can literally do anything they want to you with no legal consequences. It's a truly terrible performance review. Sanitation is primitive, at best. Waste disposal is rudimentary. often involving designated areas within or just outside the longhouse, contributing to the pervasive odors and, more importantly, the rapid spread of disease. There's no running water, no indoor plumbing. Fetching water means a trek to a nearby well or stream, often through snow or mud, carrying heavy buckets back to the longhouse. Washing is infrequent and often involves cold water and harsh lye soap. If any soap is available at all, your body, your clothes, and your living space are in a constant state of grime, a breeding ground for unseen killers. The social hierarchy extends far beyond the thralls, reinforcing your position at the very bottom. Above you are the carls, the free farmers and craftsmen, the backbone of Viking society. These are the people who own their land, their tools, and their own labor. They participate in the things, the assemblies where laws are made and justice is dispensed, and they can bear arms and fight in the levies. Their lives, while still hard and subject to the harsh realities of the age, are marked by a degree of independence and self-determination that is utterly foreign to a thrall. A little-known detail about Viking longhouses is that while they appear to be single, open spaces, archaeological evidence suggests that some had internal partitions or screens made of wood or woven materials. These wouldn't have offered true privacy, but might have provided a small degree of separation for different family units or sleeping areas, a tiny concession to personal space in an otherwise communal existence. However, this was not universal, and even with partitions, the shared air and close proximity remained. Above the carls are the jarls, the chieftains and nobles, the wealthy landowners and powerful warriors. These are the leaders, the ones who organize raids, command longships, and hold sway over vast territories. They live in larger, more elaborate longhouses, wear finer clothes, and command the respect and obedience of those below them. Their lives are still subject to the harsh realities of the age, famine, disease, and warfare, but they face these challenges from a position of relative comfort, power, and privilege, a stark contrast to your own existence. The constant presence of animals within the longhouse, while providing warmth and security, also contributes significantly to the unsanitary conditions. Their waste, their odors, and the parasites they carry all mingle with the human inhabitants, creating a fertile ground for the spread of disease. You live side by side with your livestock, sharing their air, their fleas, and their illnesses, a grim reality of symbiotic survival. It's like having a petting zoo in your living room, but the animals are also your heating system, and you never clean up after them. Your interactions with those above you are always marked by deference and fear. You lower your gaze, speak only when spoken to, and obey without question. To challenge a carl or a jarl could mean severe punishment or even death. You learn to be invisible, to move through the longhouse and the settlement performing your duties without drawing undue attention. Your survival often depends on your ability to anticipate your master's needs and to fulfill them without protest, to become a silent, obedient shadow. The academic debate still rages about the precise impact of communal longhouse living on the health and disease patterns of Viking populations, while the close proximity to animals and poor sanitation undoubtedly contributed to the spread of infectious diseases. Scholars also debate the role of specific dietary factors, climate, and genetic predispositions in shaping their overall health and mortality rates. A little-known detail about Viking age thralls is that their legal status, while dire, wasn't entirely without nuance. While they were considered property, they could, in some cases, accumulate small amounts of personal property, known as peculium, and there were even instances where thralls could buy their freedom, often through years of arduous labor and saving. However, this was a rare and difficult path, and most remained in servitude for their entire lives. Their freedom, a distant, unattainable dream, the smoke from the central hearth, while providing warmth for cooking and drying clothes, is also a constant irritant. It stings your eyes, making them water constantly, and fills your lungs with fine particles that will, over time, lead to chronic coughs, respiratory illnesses, and a slow, agonizing decline. You breathe this smoky air day in and day out, your lungs slowly deteriorating, a silent, pervasive threat that slowly erodes your health over time. The psychological toll of thraldom is immense, a constant, grinding force that slowly erodes your spirit. The constant humiliation, the lack of agency, the knowledge that your children will likely inherit your bondage. It grinds down your sense of self-worth. You might dream of freedom, of escaping back to your homeland, but the reality of your situation is a heavy weight, a constant reminder of your powerlessness. Hope is a dangerous luxury, and despair is a constant companion, a heavy blanket that smothers your spirit. Time loses all meaning in the monotonous cycle of daily chores, without external cues beyond the rising and setting of the sun. Days bleed into nights, hours into weeks. Your existence becomes a blur of repetitive tasks: tending the fire, preparing meager meals, spinning wool, mending tools, all within the confines of the smoky, crowded longhouse. There is no true leisure, no escape from the demands of survival. The academic debate still rages about the exact number of thralls in Viking society and their economic impact. While it's clear they played a significant role in agricultural production, household labor, and other intensive tasks, scholars are still trying to quantify their proportion of the population and the precise extent to which their labor contributed to Viking wealth and expansion, and how much their status varied across different regions and time periods. The psychological toll of this cramped, unsanitary existence is immense. The lack of privacy, the constant noise, the pervasive odors, and the relentless physical discomfort all contribute to a profound sense of misery. You might find yourself becoming irritable, withdrawn, or simply numb, your spirit slowly eroded by the relentless demands of your environment. There is little opportunity for personal space, for quiet reflection, for any respite from the constant presence of others. Despite the bleakness, small acts of defiance or kindness might occasionally occur. A fellow thrall might share a morsel of food, a sympathetic carl might offer a moment of respite, or you might find solace in whispered conversations with others who share your fate. A fleeting moment of human connection in the vast loneliness. These brief moments of humanity, however fleeting, can be a lifeline in an otherwise desolate existence, a tiny spark of resilience in the face of overwhelming despair. Even the warmth of the fire, while a blessing in the cold, comes with its own drawbacks. The risk of fire is ever present in a longhouse filled with straw, wood, and thatch. A stray spark, a carelessly placed ember, could quickly engulf your home in flames, destroying everything you own and leaving your family exposed to the brutal elements. You sleep with a subconscious awareness of this danger. your senses alert to any unusual smell or sound. For some thralls, their skills might offer a path to a slightly better life. A thrall who is a skilled craftsman, a smith, a carpenter, a weaver, might be valued more highly by their master, perhaps even granted slightly better living conditions or more lenient treatment. Their labor is too valuable to be squandered through abuse, offering a tiny degree of leverage. However, this doesn't equate to freedom, merely a more comfortable form of bondage. A slightly softer chain, the sounds of the longhouse, once a familiar comfort, now become a constant reminder of your misery. The restless shifting of animals, the snores of family members, the hacking coughs of the sick, the creak of timbers, the drip of water from the roof. These are the sounds that lull you to sleep and wake you in the morning. A grim symphony of your confined existence. There is no quiet, dark bedroom, no plush mattress, no escape from the pervasive noise, the concept of honor. So central to Viking warrior culture, is largely denied to thralls. They cannot participate in the assemblies. They cannot bear arms in battle unless specifically ordered to by their master, often in a desperate situation, and their deaths are rarely mourned or celebrated in the sagas. Their lives are lived in the shadows, their contributions essential but unacknowledged, their existence a means to an end for others. It's like being the unsung hero of a massive project. But instead of a bonus, you get more work, and no one even knows your name. And as the darkness presses in, and the coal seeps deeper into your bones, you understand, with chilling clarity, how Viking settlements were really full of misery, especially within the confines of the longhouse. It was not just a dwelling, but a crucible of discomfort, disease, and constant struggle, where privacy was a forgotten luxury, and every breath was a reminder of your harsh reality. Your existence is a silent scream, echoing from the smoky rafters, a life consumed by the relentless demands of survival in a cramped, unsanitary world. When a thrall dies, their body is often disposed of without ceremony, buried in an unmarked grave, or simply left for scavengers. There are no elaborate burial mounds, no grave goods to accompany them into the afterlife. Their existence, in death as in life, is largely forgotten by the wider society. A stark contrast to the elaborate funerals and memorial stones erected for fallen warriors and chieftains. Their anonymity in death mirrors their dehumanization in life. You've felt the biting cold of the pre-dawn air, the pervasive smell of wood smoke, and the constant, gnawing worry about where your next meal will come from. You've experienced the relentless cycle of physical labor that defines your days in the harsh Norse landscape, and you've learned that the longhouse, your communal dwelling, is a crucible of discomfort, disease, and constant struggle. But even if you manage to survive the cramped, unsanitary conditions of your home, and even if you avoid the immediate dangers of accident or violence, there is an enemy far more ancient, more pervasive, and ultimately more terrifying that stalks every Viking settlement famine. This constant, gnawing threat transforms every winter into a desperate battle for survival. A grim reality that overshadowed even the most glorious of raids. The institution of slavery also had a profound impact on the Viking economy and their expansion. The acquisition of thralls through raiding provided a cheap and readily available labor force, allowing for the development of new lands, the maintenance of large estates, and the production of goods for trade. This economic engine was a key factor in the Norse expansion across Europe and beyond. Built on the backs of countless enslaved lives, you wake not to the gentle chime of an alarm clock, but to the hollow, insistent ache in your stomach. It's a familiar sensation, a dull, persistent pang that has become your constant companion, especially as the days shorten and the cold deepens. You try to ignore it, to push it down, but it's a relentless torment, a physical manifestation of the scarcity that defines your life. You look around the longhouse at the gaunt faces of your family members, each one bearing the subtle marks of deprivation, and a cold knot of fear tightens in your chest. This pervasive threat of famine was a common historical fact for Viking settlements, especially in the more marginal lands, where a single bad harvest or harsh winter could mean widespread starvation. And as the sun sets on another day in the Viking settlement, casting long shadows across the fields and longhouses, you lay down your weary body, covered in dust and sweat, your muscles screaming in protest. You understand, with chilling clarity, how Viking settlements were really full of misery, especially when your life was defined by the pervasive reality of thraldom and lost freedom. It was not just an external danger, but an internal chain, binding you to a fate dictated by others, where every moment endured was a testament to your unyielding will, and every day was a gamble with your very life, constantly shadowed by the weight of your servitude. Breakfast, if it can even be called that, is a meager affair. A handful of coarse, stale bread, perhaps a few dried berries if the last harvest was exceptionally good, or a small piece of dried fish, carefully rationed and chewed slowly to prolong the fleeting sense of sustenance. Every crumb, every morsel, is precious, consumed with desperate urgency, your body screaming for nourishment. There are no leisurely meals, no second helpings, no indulgence. Every bite is a calculated act of survival, for a single mistake in rationing, a moment of weakness, could mean the difference between enduring the winter and succumbing to its icy grip. Imagine trying to survive an entire winter on what you could fit in your pantry, with no grocery store, no delivery apps, and no emergency food supply. It certainly makes your hangry moments seem utterly trivial. You've battled the insidious, gnawing threat of famine, feeling your body waste away, and your mind fraying at the edges as winter relentlessly consumed your meager stores. You've endured the cramped, unsanitary conditions of the longhouse, and the pervasive threat of disease and death, those unseen killers that stalk every Viking settlement. You've felt your life consumed by the relentless, back-breaking reality of brutal labor, from dawn till dusk. A constant demand on your physical and mental reserves. You've even faced the volatile, unpredictable dangers of feuds and violence, where a single insult could plunge your life into a terrifying cycle of vengeance. And you've learned that even if born free, your existence is fundamentally shaped by a rigid social hierarchy. But now, as you look beyond the confines of your longhouse and the immediate threats of your community, you face an adversary as vast and unyielding as the very land itself, the harsh elements, and the profound isolation of your Viking settlement. Your life is a constant battle against the biting cold, the relentless winds, and the unforgiving wilderness that surrounds you, making every moment a testament to sheer endurance. This pervasive exposure to extreme weather and geographical isolation was a common historical fact, shaping the daily lives and survival strategies of Viking communities. The arrival of winter is not just a change in season, it is a declaration of war. The fertile fields, which demanded so much of your labor, now lie frozen and barren, covered in a blanket of snow. The sea, which provided sustenance through fishing, becomes treacherous, its waters icy and its storms more frequent, making fishing a dangerous gamble. The forests, once teeming with game, are now silent and empty, their resources depleted. Your survival now depends entirely on the stores you manage to accumulate during the brief, frantic growing season, and the efficiency with which you can stretch those dwindling supplies. You wake, not to the gentle chime of an alarm clock, but to the deep, pervasive ache in your muscles, a familiar companion that greets you each morning. The cold, damp air of the longhouse seeps into your bones, making your limbs stiff and reluctant to move. You push yourself up from your straw pallet, the rough wool of your tunic chafing against your skin, and begin the day's first chores. But as you step outside, the true nature of your misery becomes starkly clear. The wind, a constant howling presence, whips across your face, stinging your eyes and cutting through your layers of wool. The sky is often gray, heavy with the promise of snow or sleet, and the landscape stretches out, stark and unforgiving, a vast expanse of rock, ice, and stunted trees. There's no gentle warmth here, no easy comfort, only the relentless, biting embrace of the elements. The cold intensifies, seeping into your very bones, a pervasive chill that no amount of fire or rough wool can entirely banish. You spend more time indoors, huddled around the central hearth, desperately trying to conserve what little body heat you have. The longhouse, which was once a place of activity, now becomes a silent, tense space filled with the quiet desperation of thousands of hungry stomachs. The sounds of daily life are muted, replaced by the rhythmic creak of timbers under the weight of snow, the distant howl of the wind, and the constant gnawing rumble of your own empty stomach. Your settlement, whether nestled in a fjord, clinging to a rocky coastline, or carved out of a sparse forest, is profoundly isolated, distant from other communities, separated by vast tracts of untamed wilderness, treacherous mountains, or stormy seas. You are cut off from the wider world. News travels slowly, if at all, and visitors are rare, often bringing more challenges than comfort. This geographical isolation means that your community must be entirely self-sufficient, relying solely on its own resources, its own labor, and its own resilience to survive. There are no easy supply lines, no quick trips to the market for forgotten necessities. Everything you need, you must produce or acquire yourself. A constant, gnawing pressure that never truly subsides. It's like living in a remote cabin in the wilderness. But your nearest neighbor is a week's journey away, and the only delivery service is a longship that might never arrive. A little-known detail about Viking survival strategies is the importance of stored food beyond simple grains and dried meat. They developed sophisticated methods of fermenting and preserving various foods, including dairy products like skyar, a fermented dairy product, fish like hakar, fermented shark, and even some vegetables, which not only extended their shelf life, but also provided essential nutrients in the lean winter months. However, these methods were still dependent on a successful initial harvest or catch, and could not prevent widespread famine if resources failed. The cold is relentless, a pervasive chill that seeps into your very bones and never truly leaves. In winter, the temperatures plummet, freezing the ground solid, turning rivers and lakes into sheets of ice, and coating everything in a blanket of snow. You spend your days constantly battling the cold, huddling by the central hearth, adding precious wood to the fire, or layering on rough wool clothing. But even indoors, the cold finds its way in, seeping through the cracks in the walls, chilling the air, making every breath mist before your eyes. Outdoors, the cold is a physical torment, numbing your fingers and toes, threatening frostbite, and making every task an agonizing effort. You learn to move quickly, to keep your blood flowing, to perform your chores with a desperate urgency to generate warmth. As the weeks of winter stretch into months, the chronic malnutrition begins to take its insidious toll. Your body, already weakened by relentless labor and the pervasive cold, starts to waste away. Your muscles atrophy. Your skin grows pale and clammy, stretched taut over your protruding bones. Your hair becomes brittle, your teeth ache, and your vision blurs from lack of essential nutrients. You are constantly fatigued, your movements sluggish, your thoughts fragmented. You are slowly, inexorably, being consumed from within, your life force draining from you with each passing day. The wind is a constant, howling tormentor. It whips across the landscape, carrying snow and ice, cutting through your clothing, and chilling you to the bone. It howls around the longhouse, rattling the timbers, a constant mournful sound that amplifies your sense of isolation. When storms arrive, the wind intensifies, turning into a gale that can rip thatch from roofs, tear sails from longships, and make travel utterly impossible. You are trapped indoors, listening to the relentless roar of the wind, knowing that outside, the elements are waging war on your settlement, threatening your livestock, and burying your world under drifts of snow. It's like living in a perpetual wind tunnel, but the wind is also trying to freeze you to death, and there's no off switch. The lack of essential vitamins and minerals leads to a host of debilitating conditions. Scurvy, caused by a lack of vitamin C, can cause your gums to bleed, your teeth to loosen, and your old wounds to reopen. Anemia, from iron deficiency, leaves you perpetually weak and breathless. Rickets, from a lack of vitamin D, can cause your bones to soften and deform. These unseen illnesses, born of scarcity, add another layer of misery to your existence, slowly eroding your health and making you more susceptible to other infections. A common historical fact is that Viking settlements, especially those in more northerly regions like Iceland or Greenland, faced extremely challenging climates, with short growing seasons and long, harsh winters. Their survival depended heavily on effective resource management, including storing vast amounts of food, utilizing every part of animals, and developing robust building techniques to withstand the elements. The academic debate still rages about the precise impact of climate fluctuations, such as the Little Ice Age, or smaller regional climate shifts, on the frequency and severity of famine in Viking settlements. While a warmer period might have facilitated expansion, scholars debate how much minor climate shifts impacted agricultural yields and contributed to the necessity of raiding or migration, suggesting a complex interplay between environmental factors and human survival strategies. The dampness is pervasive, clinging to everything. The air is heavy with moisture. The stone walls of your longhouse weep with condensation, and the ground beneath your feet is often muddy or perpetually wet. This dampness, combined with the cold, penetrates your clothing, making you shiver uncontrollably and contributing to constant aches in your joints. It also creates ideal conditions for mold and mildew, which thrive in your living spaces, contributing to respiratory problems and an overall sense of discomfort. The psychological impact of chronic hunger and the constant threat of starvation is profound. Your mind becomes obsessed with food, your thoughts consumed by the primal need for sustenance. You might hallucinate feasts, vivid images of delicious food and warm, satisfying meals, only to be brought back to the grim reality of your empty stomach and the gnawing ache. This constant torment erodes your sanity, making you irritable, disoriented, and increasingly desperate, pushing you to the brink of madness. You might even resort to eating things you would normally never consider: bark, roots, or even the leather of your own boots. A desperate gamble for survival. It's like being in a perpetual, high-stakes cooking competition, but the only ingredient is despair. And if you lose, you starve. Travel between settlements is a perilous undertaking, often impossible for much of the year. The roads, if they exist at all, are rough tracks, easily obscured by snow or mud. The sea, your primary highway, becomes a raging beast in winter, its waters icy and its storms frequent and violent. A journey that might take a day in summer can become a week-long ordeal, or an impossibility in winter. This isolation means that help is slow to arrive. News is scarce, and communities are left to fend for themselves against any threat, whether from famine, disease, or rival clans. The desperation can lead to difficult, heartbreaking decisions. You might be forced to slaughter your precious livestock, the very animals that provide warmth and milk, simply to gain a few more days of sustenance. You might see families forced to sell their children into servitude or to abandon the elderly, simply because there is not enough food to sustain everyone. These are not acts of cruelty, but acts of desperation, born of the brutal necessity of survival in a world where resources are finite and life is cheap. A little-known detail about Viking settlements is their reliance on specific types of local resources for building and fuel. In treeless areas like Iceland or Greenland, they heavily relied on turf for building materials and on driftwood or even dried animal dung for fuel, as timber was scarce. This adaptation to local resources was crucial for survival in isolated, resource-limited environments, highlighting their ingenuity in the face of extreme conditions. The community, which was once a source of strength and solidarity, can become strained under the relentless pressure of famine. When resources are scarce, competition increases. Neighbors might eye each other's dwindling stores with suspicion. Disputes over land, over hunting grounds, over fishing rights can escalate into violent feuds, further weakening the community and diverting precious resources from the fight against hunger. The bonds of kinship, while strong, can be tested to the breaking point when starvation looms. The academic debate still rages about the precise impact of environmental factors, such as volcanic eruptions or periods of climatic cooling like the Little Ice Age, on the long-term viability and eventual abandonment of some Viking settlements, particularly in Greenland. While some scholars emphasize the role of climate change in their decline, others point to a complex interplay of environmental, social, and economic factors, suggesting that human adaptability and decision-making also played a crucial role. The search for food becomes a daily, desperate quest. You might venture out into the frozen wilderness, hunting for scarce game, or trying to fish in the icy waters, risking your life for a meager catch. Every trip is a gamble with fate, a race against time before your internal reserves are completely depleted. You learn to recognize every edible plant, every sign of game, every potential source of nourishment. Your knowledge of the land becoming a matter of life and death. The wilderness surrounding your settlement is vast and untamed, a beautiful but dangerous expanse. It is home to wild animals, wolves, bears, and other predators that pose a constant threat to your livestock and, occasionally, to humans. Hunting is a necessity, but it is also a perilous undertaking, requiring immense skill and courage, and often leading you far from the safety of your longhouse. The sheer scale of the wild, its indifference to human life, amplifies your sense of vulnerability and insignificance. It's like living next to a national park, but the bears are actively trying to eat your sheep, and there are no park rangers to call. The sounds of the longhouse, once a familiar comfort, now become a symphony of suffering. The hacking coughs of the sick, the low moans of the hungry, the restless turning of those unable to sleep from the gnawing ache in their stomachs. These are the sounds that lull you to sleep and wake you in the morning, a grim soundtrack to your confined existence. There is no escape from the pervasive misery, no quiet corner where the hunger does not follow. The psychological toll of this pervasive isolation and constant exposure to the elements is immense. The endless cold, the relentless wind, the vast empty landscape. It can grind down your spirit, leading to chronic loneliness, a profound sense of solitude, and a pervasive anxiety about the future. You are constantly battling against the forces of nature, knowing that a single harsh winter, a prolonged storm, or a failed harvest can mean the end of your community. This constant struggle breeds a deep-seated resilience, but also a profound weariness, a quiet despair that permeates your daily existence. The hope that once flickered within you, fueled by the dream of a bountiful harvest or a successful raid, is slowly extinguished by the relentless onslaught of hunger. Your spirit, once defiant, begins to crack under the constant torment. You are becoming a broken thing, a shadow of your former self, a silent testament to the brutal efficiency of famine in consuming its victims. The sounds of the elements become your constant companions, the howling of the wind, the creak of ice, the rhythmic crash of waves against the shore, the distant roar of a blizzard. These sounds, once mundane, now define your world, a grim symphony of nature's indifference. You learn to read them, to understand their warnings. For your very survival depends on your ability to interpret the subtle messages of the weather. And as the darkness presses in, and the cold seeps deeper into your bones, you understand, with chilling clarity, how Viking settlements were really full of misery, especially when the shadow of famine loomed large. It was not just a seasonal hardship, but a constant, gnawing terror that transformed every winter into a desperate battle for survival, where every meal was a victory, and every day endured was a testament to your unyielding will. Your existence is a silent scream, echoing from the empty granaries, a life consumed by the relentless demands of survival, in a world where starvation was always just around the corner. Despite the hardships, the community bonds are often incredibly strong, forged in the crucible of shared misery. You rely on your neighbors for help during a harsh winter, for shared labor during the harvest, and for mutual defense against threats. This interdependence is not just a social nicety. It is a matter of survival, a testament to the human spirit's capacity to find connection and solidarity, even in the most challenging environments. You've battled the insidious, gnawing threat of famine, feeling your body waste away and your mind fraying at the edges as winter relentlessly consumed your meager stores. You've endured the cramped, unsanitary conditions of the longhouse and the relentless physical labor that defines your days. But even if you manage to survive the hunger, the cold, and the immediate dangers of accident or violence, there is an enemy far more pervasive, more insidious, and ultimately more inescapable that stalks every Viking settlement, lurking in the shadows of your longhouse, in the stagnant water of the village well, and in the very air you breathed disease and death. In this harsh world, where medical knowledge is rudimentary and hygiene is primitive, every cough, every fever, every small cut is a potential death sentence, making your existence a short, hard, and often painful journey towards an early grave. The lack of external influences also means that cultural practices, traditions, and beliefs are deeply ingrained and slow to change. You live a life largely dictated by the customs of your ancestors, their wisdom passed down through oral tradition, shaping your worldview and your approach to survival. There is little room for innovation, little exposure to new ideas, reinforcing the traditional, often harsh, ways of life. You wake one morning, not to the usual aches of labor or the familiar pang of hunger, but to a deeper, more unsettling discomfort. Your head pounds with a dull, insistent rhythm. Your throat feels raw, and a chill, deeper than any winter cold, shivers through your bones, despite the fire. You try to rise, but your limbs feel heavy, unresponsive, as if weighed down by unseen chains. This is the insidious start of an illness, a common historical fact that often goes unmentioned in tales of Viking prowess or glorious raids. Life expectancy in Viking settlements was brutally short, and disease, not battle, was the primary killer for most people in this era, particularly for children. And as the sun sets on another day in the Viking settlement, casting long shadows across the frozen landscape, you lay down your weary body, covered in rough wool, your muscles screaming in protest. You understand, with chilling clarity, how Viking settlements were really full of misery, especially when your life was defined by the pervasive reality of isolation and exposure to the harsh elements. It was not just a seasonal hardship, but a constant, gnawing battle against the very forces of nature, where every moment endured was a testament to your unyielding will, and every day was a gamble with your very life, constantly shadowed by the indifference of the wild. Your longhouse, which you rely on for warmth and shelter, now feels oppressive. The air, already thick with stale smoke from the central hearth, is now heavier, more suffocating, filled with the mingled sense of sickness and decay. The close quarters, which fostered community, now become a breeding ground for contagion. If one person falls ill, it's only a matter of time before the sickness spreads through the entire family, sometimes the entire village, a relentless wave of unseen torment. Imagine trying to isolate yourself from a highly contagious virus when your bed is shared, and your entire life happens in one large communal room, often with animals. It's like trying to avoid a cold when you're living in a giant open-plan office with no hand sanitizer, no sick leave, and everyone is coughing directly on you. You've battled the insidious, gnawing threat of famine, feeling your body waste away and your mind fraying at the edges as winter relentlessly consumed your meager stores. You've endured the cramped, unsanitary conditions of the longhouse and the pervasive threat of disease and death, those unseen killers that stalk every Viking settlement. You've felt your life consumed by the relentless, back-breaking reality of brutal labor, from dawn till dusk. A constant demand on your physical and mental reserves. You've even faced the volatile, unpredictable dangers of feuds and violence, where a single insult could plunge your life into a terrifying cycle of vengeance. And you've learned that even if born free, your existence is fundamentally shaped by a rigid social hierarchy. You've also contended with the vast and unyielding adversary of the harsh elements and the profound isolation of your Viking settlement, where every moment is a testament to sheer endurance against the biting cold, the relentless winds, and the unforgiving wilderness. But now, as your body aches and your spirit struggles to recover, you realize that beyond the tangible miseries of your daily life, there is another, more pervasive force that governs your world, shaping your fears, your hopes, and your very destiny, the gods. In this Norse world, the divine is not distant or abstract. It is a tangible, ever-present power that dictates the weather, influences harvests, determines the outcome of battles, and even whispers in your dreams. Your existence is a constant dance with the whims of these powerful, often capricious deities, and their favor is sought with desperate fervor, for their displeasure can bring ruin, making your life a constant negotiation with the unseen. Your body, already weakened by relentless labor, chronic malnutrition. Remember that gnawing hunger from last chapter and the pervasive cold offers little resistance. The fever intensifies, plunging you into a restless delirium. You drift in and out of consciousness, your dreams filled with distorted images of longships on stormy seas, of the clang of steel, of the faces of loved ones, now blurred and distant. Your body aches, every joint protesting, every muscle screaming. You sweat profusely, then shiver uncontrollably, caught in the relentless cycle of the fever, your body battling an unseen enemy that slowly consumes you. This pervasive belief in a pantheon of active, involved gods, and the fear of their unpredictable whims, was a common historical fact, deeply woven into the fabric of Viking society, influencing everything from farming practices to warfare. There are no doctors here, no skilled healers in the modern sense, certainly no advanced medical knowledge or sterile instruments. A fellow family member, perhaps an elder with some rudimentary knowledge of traditional remedies, might try to offer comfort, a cool cloth on your brow, a few sips of precious, often murky water. Perhaps they will offer a bitter concoction brewed from wild herbs, gathered with care and passed down through generations. These are acts of kindness, born of shared suffering and desperate hope, but their effectiveness is often limited. You are left to the mercy of your own body's resilience and the whims of the gods. You wake, not to the gentle chime of an alarm clock, but to the deep, pervasive ache in your muscles, a familiar companion that greets you each morning. The cold, damp air of the longhouse seeps into your bones, making your limbs stiff and reluctant to move. You push yourself up from your straw pallet, the rough wool of your tunic chafing against your skin, and begin the day's first chores. But as you step outside, or even as you tend the central hearth, your first thought, even before the biting cold fully registers, is often of the gods. Perhaps you offer a silent prayer to Thor for strength to face the day's labor, or to Freya for a bountiful harvest from your meager fields. The sun rises, a daily miracle, and you see it not just as a celestial body, but as a gift from the gods, a sign of their continued, if sometimes grudging, benevolence. Every natural phenomenon, every stroke of luck, every misfortune is interpreted through the lens of divine intervention. A direct message from the powerful beings who control your fate. A little-known detail about Viking-era medicine is their practical, albeit rudimentary, approach to injuries and ailments. Archaeological finds and sagas suggest they had some knowledge of bone setting, basic wound care using materials like moss or cobwebs, and herbal remedies for various complaints. However, their understanding of hygiene and the causes of infection was virtually non-existent, making even minor injuries potentially fatal. They were more about treating symptoms than curing root causes. The world around you is alive with spirits and omens, a constant stream of messages from the unseen realms. The rustle of leaves in the wind might be the whisper of a forest spirit, a landvatir, or the breath of a hidden giant. The sudden flight of a raven across your path could be a sign from Odin, the All-Father, a portent of wisdom or impending doom. The way the smoke curls from the longhouse hearth might foretell a visitor or a coming storm, a subtle hint from the Norns, the goddesses of fate. You learn to read these signs, to interpret the subtle messages that the gods and spirits send, for they can offer guidance, warning, or a chilling glimpse into the future. You are constantly scanning your environment, your senses attuned to these hidden meanings, for your very survival depends on your ability to understand the divine will. It's like living in a constant state of checking your horoscope, but instead of vague predictions about your love life, it's about whether you're going to survive the winter, or if your next raid will end in glory or gruesome death. Beyond the common fevers and colds, other ailments are a constant, terrifying threat. Dysentery, caused by contaminated water or food. Remember, those meager, often moldy rations can sweep through a settlement, dehydrating and weakening its victims until they waste away, their bodies ravaged by incessant vomiting and diarrhea. Parasites, from contaminated meat, raw fish, or poor hygiene, can infest your gut, leading to chronic discomfort, nutrient deficiencies, and a slow, debilitating decline. Skin infections, from cuts and scrapes that turn septic in the damp, filthy environment, can spread rapidly, leading to painful abscesses, blood poisoning, or even gangrene. A simple thorn prick from a bush, if left untreated, could be the beginning of the end. A tiny wound leading to a colossal demise. Sacrifice is a fundamental part of your religious practice, a way to appease the gods and seek their favor. You might offer a small portion of your harvest to the gods, leaving it at a sacred grove, a hurgar, or by a standing stone. Animals might be sacrificed, their blood consecrating the ground, their meat shared in a communal feast, a blot, to honor the deities and strengthen the bonds between the human and divine realms. These acts are not about fear alone, but about reciprocity, about maintaining a good relationship with the powerful forces that govern your world. You give to the gods, hoping they will give back in kind. A good harvest, a safe journey across the treacherous seas, victory in battle, or simply protection from the myriad dangers that stalk your life. Imagine the agonizing pain of a toothache in this era. There are no dentists, no painkillers beyond raw courage or a swig of ale. A decaying tooth would simply rot, causing excruciating pain, until it either fell out or became so infected that it led to a more widespread illness, perhaps even a fatal abscess in your jaw. You might try to pull it out yourself with crude tools, or have a desperate friend attempt it, the pain almost unbearable, the risk of further infection immense. It's enough to make you appreciate your regular dental checkups and the invention of toothpaste. The chieftains and jarls often act as religious leaders, performing rituals and interpreting omens for their communities. They might consult with seers or vulvas, wise women who possess the ability to communicate with the spirit world, foresee the future, and even influence fate through magic or cider. These vulvas, often traveling from settlement to settlement, hold immense power and respect, their prophecies shaping decisions that affect entire clans, influencing everything from marriage alliances to military campaigns. Imagine your local politician also being your spiritual advisor, and their campaign promises involve predicting the next big storm or the success of your next fishing trip. It certainly adds a new layer to election season, and a very personal one: injuries, whether from accidents during labor like a slipped axe or a falling log, the brutality of a raid, or the casual violence of a feud, are another major source of suffering and death. A broken bone, if not set correctly, could heal improperly, leaving you with a permanent limp or a deformed limb, rendering you unable to work or fight effectively. A deep cut from an axe or a knife, even if it doesn't immediately kill you, could become infected with terrifying speed. Without antibiotics, even a minor bacterial infection could spread, leading to gangrene and the need for a crude amputation, if such a drastic measure was even possible, often resulting in death from shock or further infection. A common historical fact is that Norse religion was polytheistic, with a pantheon of gods and goddesses associated with various aspects of life, such as Odin wisdom, war, death, Thor thunder, strength, protection, Freya love, fertility, war, death, and Freyr fertility, prosperity. These deities were believed to be active participants in the world, directly influencing human affairs. Childbirth is a perilous journey for both mother and child, a terrifying gamble with life itself. Without modern medical care, complications are common, and both infant and maternal mortality rates are tragically high. You witness mothers struggle and sometimes succumb, leaving behind grieving families and orphaned children. You see infants, born frail or prematurely, fight for their lives in the harsh environment of the longhouse, often losing the battle within days or weeks. The joy of a new birth is always tempered by the knowledge of how fragile life truly is, and how little control you have over the fate of your offspring. It's like playing a game of Russian roulette, but the stakes are 2 lives, and you play it every time someone gets pregnant. Death is not an end, but a transition, a journey to the afterlife. You believe in various realms where the dead reside. The brave warriors, those who fall in battle, are destined for Valhalla, Odin's grand hall, to feast and fight until Ragnarok, the twilight of the gods. Others might go to Folkvanger, Freya's field, or to Hell, the cold, dark realm of the dead. Your actions in life, your bravery, your honor, your adherence to the customs of your ancestors, these determine your fate in the afterlife. This belief system provides a framework for understanding death, offering solace and a sense of purpose to a life often cut short by violence, disease, or hardship. The fear of dying a straw death, a death from illness or old age rather than in battle, was a common anxiety, as it was believed to prevent entry into Valhalla, the very air you breathe in the longhouse, thick with smoke and the exhalations of many bodies, contributes to respiratory illnesses. Constant exposure to smoke from the hearth can lead to chronic coughs, lung problems, and a weakened immune system, making you more susceptible to other infections. This is a subtle, pervasive threat that slowly erodes your health over time, a constant, unseen enemy lurking in your own home. The sagas and myths are not just stories, they are sacred texts, repositories of divine knowledge, moral lessons, and historical accounts. You gather around the smoky fire in the longhouse during the long, dark winter evenings, listening to the tales of Odin's wisdom, Thor's strength, Freya's beauty, and Loki's cunning. These narratives shape your understanding of the world, of good and evil, of honor and betrayal. They provide role models, warnings, and a sense of connection to a larger cosmic drama, a shared cultural heritage that binds your community together. The academic debate still rages about the precise average lifespan of a Viking-era individual and the primary causes of death, while archaeological evidence from burial sites provides clues like healed fractures and signs of certain diseases. Scholars debate the extent to which specific factors like diet, climate, and social status contributed to their overall health and mortality rates, and how much the harshness of their environment directly impacted their short lives. Omens and portents are taken seriously, a constant source of anxiety and interpretation. A dream, a strange animal behavior, a sudden illness, an unusual weather pattern. These are not random occurrences, but messages from the gods, or warnings from the spirits. If a raven flies from the left, it might be a bad sign. If a wolf howls at the moon, it could signify impending conflict. You consult with elders, with those who have experience in interpreting these signs, seeking to understand the gods' will and to avoid their wrath. This constant vigilance against negative omens, this perpetual search for divine messages, can add another layer of anxiety to an already stressful life, making every unusual event a source of potential dread. The psychological toll of living with constant illness and the omnipresent threat of death is immense. You live in a state of perpetual anxiety, your nerves frayed, your senses heightened. Every cough, every fever, every new ache in your body fills you with dread. You witness the suffering and death of your family and neighbors, knowing that your own fate could be sealed at any moment. This constant stress, combined with physical discomfort, can lead to chronic anxiety, depression, and a profound sense of helplessness. You learn to suppress your emotions, to push through the pain, to simply exist in a state of perpetual fear. A little-known detail about Norse religious practice is the significance of personal amulets and charms. While larger communal rituals were important, many Vikings carried small personal items, miniature Mjolnir Thor's hammer pendants, runic carvings, or even animal teeth, believing they offered protection, brought good luck, or connected them more directly to their chosen deities. These were not just ornaments. They were vital tools for navigating a world filled with unseen forces and unpredictable divine whims, a personal shield against the unknown. The lack of hygiene, already a torment, is exacerbated by the communal living. You are forced to live in your own filth and the filth of others. Waste disposal is rudimentary, attracting vermin and spreading disease. Your body, your clothes, and your living space are in a constant state of grime, a breeding ground for unseen killers. You try to clean yourself with what little resources you have, but it's a losing battle against the pervasive filth. The academic debate still rages about the precise nature of Norse polytheism and whether it was a unified, coherent system across all Viking lands, or if there were significant regional variations and evolving beliefs. Scholars continue to analyze archaeological evidence, like grave goods and runic inscriptions, literary sources like sagas and Eddic poetry, and comparative religious studies to reconstruct the complex tapestry of their spiritual world, and how much it differed from one settlement to another. The sounds of sickness become a grim symphony in the longhouse, the hacking coughs of the sick, the low moans of those in pain, the restless turning of feverish bodies. These are the sounds that lull you to sleep and wake you in the morning, a grim soundtrack to your confined existence. There is no escape from the pervasive misery, no quiet corner where the sickness does not follow. When a storm rages, you see it as a manifestation of Thor's power, his hammer striking the clouds, his chariot rumbling across the sky. When the harvest is poor, you might interpret it as a sign of Freyr's displeasure, or a punishment from the Norns, the goddesses of fate, weaving a grim thread into your destiny. You don't question the gods' power. You seek to appease them, to understand their will, and to live in harmony with the powerful, often terrifying, forces they represent. Your life is a constant negotiation with these unseen powers, a desperate attempt to gain their favor and avoid their wrath. The hope that once flickered within you, fueled by the dream of a bountiful harvest or a successful raid, is slowly extinguished by the relentless onslaught of disease and the ever-present shadow of death. Your spirit, once defiant, begins to crack under the constant torment. You are becoming a broken thing, a shadow of your former self, a silent testament to the brutal efficiency of illness in consuming its victims. The concept of word, or fate, is central to your worldview. You believe that your destiny is, to some extent, predetermined, woven by the Norns at your birth. However, this doesn't mean you are passive. You still have agency. You still make choices. And your bravery, your honor, your actions can influence your fate, perhaps even allowing you to defy a grim prophecy or achieve a glorious end. It's a delicate balance between accepting what is fated and striving to shape your own destiny, a constant tension between submission and defiance. It's like believing in destiny, but still frantically refreshing your job application status, just in case the gods need a little nudge. And as the darkness presses in, and the coal seeps deeper into your bones, you understand, with chilling clarity, how Viking settlements were really full of misery, especially when the unseen killers of disease and death became your constant companions. It was not just a seasonal hardship, but a constant, gnawing terror that transformed every day into a desperate battle for survival, where every breath was a gamble, and every moment endured was a testament to your unyielding will. Your existence is a silent scream, echoing from the sickbeds, a life consumed by the relentless demands of survival in a world where death was always just around the corner, often brought by the smallest, invisible enemy, magic or cider. is also a recognized force, both feared and respected. While some might dismiss it as mere superstition, many believe in the power of curses, blessings, and spells. Those who practice cider, particularly vulvas, are both revered and feared, their abilities seen as a direct connection to the supernatural. You might seek their counsel for healing, for protection, or for insight into your future, but you also approach them with caution, knowing that their power can be dangerous if misused, or if their prophecies are grim. You've battled the insidious, gnawing threat of famine, feeling your body waste away and your mind fraying at the edges as winter relentlessly consumed your meager stores. You've endured the cramped, unsanitary conditions of the longhouse and the pervasive threat of disease and death, those unseen killers that stalk every Viking settlement. Your existence has been a constant struggle against the elements, against illness, and against the very limitations of your environment. But underlying all these miseries, defining your every waking moment, is the relentless, back-breaking reality of brutal labor. Your life is an unending cycle of toil, from dawn till dusk, a constant demand on your physical and mental reserves, with no true respite, no escape from the demands of survival. This pervasive, unending physical labor was a common historical fact, forming the very foundation of Viking society and consuming the lives of most of its inhabitants. The conversion to Christianity, which slowly spread through the Norse lands, was a profound and often violent upheaval. You might witness the struggle between the old ways and the new, as missionaries arrive, preaching a different God, a different afterlife, and a different set of moral rules. Some of your kin might embrace the new faith, seeing its promise of peace and salvation as an appealing alternative to the harsh realities of the old gods. Others cling fiercely to the traditions of their ancestors, seeing the new religion as a threat to their identity and their way of life, a foreign intrusion into their sacred world. You wake, not to the gentle chime of an alarm clock, but to the deep, pervasive ache in your muscles, a familiar companion that greets you each morning. Your body, already weary from yesterday's ceaseless efforts, protests with every movement. The cold, damp air of the longhouse seeps into your bones, making your limbs stiff and reluctant to move. You push yourself up from your straw pallet, the rough wool of your tunic chafing against your skin, and begin the day's first chores. There's no time for a leisurely awakening, no moment for quiet contemplation. The demands of survival begin immediately, a relentless, unyielding master. It's like being on a perpetual, unpaid internship where the work never ends. The conditions are terrible, and your only compensation is not starving to death. The clash of religions is not just a theological debate. It's a political and social struggle. Christian kings and chieftains seek to consolidate power, using the new faith as a unifying force, often with the backing of powerful foreign rulers. Old alliances are broken, new ones are forged, and sometimes blood is shed in the name of different gods. You might find yourself caught in the middle, forced to choose between the familiar comfort of your ancestral beliefs and the promises of a new, powerful religion, a choice that could mean ostracization or even death. It's like your favorite local band suddenly going mainstream and changing their style, and you have to decide if you're still a fan, but if you're not, you might get exiled. Your first task might be to tend the central hearth, carefully coaxing the embers from last night's blaze back to life. The warmth when it finally spreads, is a small but profound comfort, a brief respite before you step out into the biting cold of the Norse dawn. Then, it's off to the animal stalls within the longhouse, or just outside, to feed the livestock, the sheep, goats, cattle, perhaps a pig or two, whose survival is inextricably linked to your own. You shovel their waste, carry heavy buckets of water, and ensure they are adequately fed, knowing that their health directly impacts your family's ability to eat and stay warm through the coming months. Even as Christianity gains ground, elements of the old beliefs persist. Old customs, old superstitions, old ways of thinking continue to influence daily life, even among those who claim to be Christian. The transition is slow and uneven, a gradual blending of old and new, rather than a sudden, complete abandonment of the past. The echoes of Odin and Thor can still be heard in the whispers of the wind, even in a land that has embraced the cross, a testament to the enduring power of ancient beliefs. As the sun begins its slow ascent, painting the eastern sky with muted hues of gray and pink, you are already outside, facing the harsh landscape. If it is spring, the fields, which were already a challenge, demand your immediate attention. You spend hours bent over the earth, your back screaming in protest, your hands raw and bleeding from the cold and the sharp stones. You might be tilling the land with a simple ard, a primitive plow that merely scratches the surface, or painstakingly removing rocks from a field that seems to produce more stones than crops. The soil is thin, rocky, and often frozen for much of the year, making every furrow, every seed planted, an act of immense physical effort and desperate hope. The growing season is short, a frantic race against time to coax enough food from the earth to last through the brutal winter months. The gods, then, are not just figures in myths. They are an integral part of your daily reality, a constant presence in your life. They are the source of both comfort and fear, of hope and despair. Their whims dictate your fortune. Their favor is essential for your survival, and their displeasure can bring ruin. And as you navigate the challenges of Viking life, you do so with a constant awareness of the divine, knowing that your fate, and the fate of your kin, rests in the hands of powerful, unpredictable forces, making every moment a negotiation with the unseen. It's a bit like living with a really strict, all-powerful parent who also controls the weather and your bank account, and might smite you for a bad harvest. Good luck with that allowance. If it's summer, the labor intensifies. You might be tending to the growing crops, weeding relentlessly under the often unforgiving sun, ensuring that every precious plant has a chance to thrive. Or perhaps you are involved in the construction or repair of buildings, felling trees in the nearby forests, hauling heavy logs, and shaping timber with simple yet heavy tools. Woodworking is a vital skill. Every axe handle, every bowl, every plank for a longhouse or a boat must be meticulously shaped by hand, demanding immense strength, precision, and countless hours of effort. The rhythmic thud of your axe, the scrape of your adze, become the soundtrack to your days, a testament to your unending toil. You've battled the insidious, gnawing threat of famine, feeling your body waste away, and your mind fraying at the edges as winter relentlessly consumed your meager stores. You've endured the cramped, unsanitary conditions of the longhouse, and the pervasive threat of disease and death. Those unseen killers that stalk every Viking settlement. You felt your life consumed by the relentless, back-breaking reality of brutal labor, from dawn till dusk, a constant demand on your physical and mental reserves. You've even faced the volatile, unpredictable dangers of feuds and violence, where a single insult could plunge your life into a terrifying cycle of vengeance, and you've learned that even if born free, your existence is fundamentally shaped by a rigid social hierarchy. You've also contended with the vast and unyielding adversary of the harsh elements and the profound isolation of your Viking settlement, where every moment is a testament to sheer endurance against the biting cold, the relentless winds, and the unforgiving wilderness. And you've navigated a world where the gods held sway, their whims shaping your fears, your hopes, and your very destiny. Now, as your body aches and your spirit struggles to recover, as the years of your life unfold, you realize that despite all your efforts, all your resilience, your existence in a Viking settlement is, at its core, an enduring struggle, a life defined by hardship, where every breath is a victory and true comfort remains an elusive dream. A common historical fact is that most Vikings were primarily farmers and fishermen, tied to the land and sea for their survival, rather than full-time raiders. Their daily lives were dominated by agricultural cycles, animal husbandry, and the constant maintenance of their homes and tools, demanding immense physical labor from every member of the household. You wake, not to the gentle chime of an alarm clock, but to the familiar deep ache in your muscles, a constant companion that greets you each morning. The cold, damp air of the longhouse seeps into your bones, making your limbs stiff and reluctant to move. You push yourself up from your straw pallet, the rough wool of your tunic chafing against your skin, and begin the day's first chores. There's no true rest, no genuine rejuvenation. Each morning simply brings a renewed demand on your already weary body and mind. It's like being trapped in a never-ending cycle of extreme survival training. But the training is your actual life. And there's no graduation ceremony, just more training. As a woman, your labor is equally demanding, though often confined more to the longhouse and its immediate surroundings, or the nearby fields. You are responsible for preparing food, often a time-consuming process of grinding grain with a hand mill, kneading dough for bread, and cooking over the open fire, your eyes stinging from the smoke. Textile production is another monumental task that consumes countless hours, from shearing sheep to cleaning and carding the raw wool, then painstakingly spinning it into yarn, and finally weaving that yarn into rough cloth on a loom. Every piece of clothing worn by your family is the result of countless hours of painstaking, repetitive effort. You also preserve food, drying fish, salting meat, fermenting milk, to ensure there's enough to eat when fresh provisions are scarce, a constant race against decay and the looming threat of famine. Childcare, of course, is a constant, demanding duty, often performed while simultaneously carrying out other arduous chores, with no break, no respite. The cycle of seasons, which once offered a predictable rhythm to your farming life, now feels like a relentless treadmill of demands. Spring brings the back-breaking labor of tilling the thin, rocky soil, planting seeds with desperate hope. Summer brings the relentless sun and the constant vigilance required to protect your meager crops from pests and drought, followed by the frantic, exhausting rush of harvest. Autumn brings the chilling winds and the desperate need to prepare for winter, gathering every last resource. And winter, the most brutal of all, brings the gnawing hunger, the pervasive cold, the constant threat of disease, and the long, dark hours spent huddled in the smoky longhouse, stretching dwindling supplies. There is no true off-season, no period of genuine leisure or relaxation. Even during the darkest days of winter, tasks like tool repair, net mending, and caring for livestock continue, demanding your constant attention and effort. Even the simplest tasks are fraught with difficulty and demand immense effort. Fetching water means a trek to a nearby well or stream, often through snow or mud. Carrying heavy buckets back to the longhouse, your arms aching, your feet slipping on the treacherous ground. There's no running water, no indoor plumbing, no easy conveniences. Waste disposal is primitive, contributing to the pervasive odors and, more importantly, the spread of disease, adding another layer of misery to your daily existence. Your body, a testament to your endurance, is also a map of your suffering. Your hands are gnarled and calloused, permanently scarred by years of gripping rough tools, hauling heavy loads, and battling the elements. Your back is hunched, your joints ache with chronic pain, and your limbs bear the marks of old injuries, a twisted ankle from a fall, a deep gash from a slipped axe, a persistent cough from years of breathing smoky air. You are a living embodiment of the harshness of your environment, your physical form, a grim chronicle of your unending labor. You carry the weight of your life not just in your spirit, but in every aching muscle and creaking joint. A little-known detail about Viking-era tools is their relative simplicity and the immense skill required to use them effectively. While iron was available, it was precious, and many tools were made of wood, bone, or stone. Maintaining these tools, sharpening blades, mending handles, repairing broken implements, was a constant chore that demanded time and effort, adding to the daily workload. Imagine trying to build a house with only hand tools, and then having to constantly repair those tools themselves. The psychological toll is immense, a constant, grinding pressure that slowly erodes your spirit. The relentless demands of survival, the pervasive fear of famine and disease, the constant threat of violence from feuds or raids, the profound isolation of your settlement. These all conspire to create a deep-seated anxiety that never truly leaves you. You learn to suppress your emotions, to push through the pain, to simply exist in a state of perpetual vigilance. True joy is fleeting, often overshadowed by the knowledge that hardship is always just around the corner. You might find yourself becoming stoic, hardened by your experiences, your capacity for genuine happiness slowly diminished. It's like living in a constant state of low-grade panic, where every small problem feels like a catastrophe, and true relaxation is just a myth. If it's harvest time, the work intensifies, becoming a frantic race against the elements and the clock. Every grain, every root vegetable, every berry must be gathered, dried, and stored meticulously. You work from sunup to sundown, often with the help of your children, their small hands learning the rhythm of the harvest from a very young age. The granaries must be filled, the root cellars stocked, the dried fish hung from rafters. There's no room for error. A spoiled batch of food could mean starvation when the snows begin to fall, making every hour of labor a desperate gamble for survival. The community, while a source of vital support, also presents its own challenges. The close quarters of the longhouse, while offering warmth, also mean a lack of privacy and a constant exposure to the illnesses of others. The interdependence born of necessity can also breed tension when resources are scarce, leading to disputes and feuds that further destabilize your fragile existence. You are bound to your kin, to your neighbors, for survival. But these bonds are often tested by the relentless pressures of your environment. The academic debate still rages about the precise division of labor between men and women in Viking society, and how much it varied by region, social status, and the specific economic activities of a settlement. While traditional views often emphasize clear gender roles, archaeological and textual evidence suggest a more flexible and complementary system, where both men and women engaged in a wide range of tasks essential for survival, blurring the lines between male and female labor. Even your spiritual life, a source of comfort and meaning, is intertwined with misery. The gods are powerful, but often capricious, their favor uncertain. You constantly strive to appease them through sacrifices and rituals, hoping to gain their benevolence, but knowing that their displeasure can bring ruin. The fear of divine wrath, of bad omens, of an unfavorable fate woven by the Norns, adds another layer of anxiety to your already burdened life. You are constantly negotiating with unseen forces, hoping for a good harvest, a safe journey, or a swift death in battle that ensures entry into Valhalla, rather than a straw death from illness. Beyond the daily chores, there are larger, more communal projects that demand your labor. If a new longhouse is being built, or a longship is under construction, every able-bodied person contributes. You might be involved in hauling massive logs, preparing timber, or weaving the colossal sails that will propel the ships across the seas. These projects are immense undertakings, requiring coordinated effort and consuming vast amounts of time and energy from the entire community, adding to the already relentless demands of daily life. A common historical fact is that the average lifespan in Viking settlements was significantly shorter than in modern times, often in the 30s or 40s. This was due to a combination of factors including high infant mortality, malnutrition, rampant infectious diseases, accidents during labor, and violence from feuds or raids. Surviving into old age was rare and a testament to immense resilience. The constant physical exertion takes a severe toll on your body. Your muscles are perpetually sore, your joints ache, and your hands are calloused, blistered, and often bleeding. Your back is constantly strained from bending, lifting, and carrying heavy loads. Your body, a machine driven by necessity, is slowly breaking down under the relentless demands placed upon it. There are no ergonomic tools, no rest breaks, no concept of occupational safety. You work until your body gives out, or until you are no longer able. The cycle of life itself is marked by hardship. Childbirth is a perilous journey for both mother and child, often ending in tragedy. Infancy is fraught with danger, as many children do not survive beyond their first few years, succumbing to illness or malnutrition. Childhood is brief, quickly giving way to the demands of labor, as children are expected to contribute to the household from a very young age. Old age, if you are fortunate enough to reach it, brings its own miseries, chronic pain, weakened bodies, and the knowledge that you are becoming a burden on your kin. Your productivity diminished. There is no concept of retirement, no leisurely golden years. You work until your body gives out, or until you are no longer able. The psychological impact of this endless toil is immense. the monotony of the labor, the lack of control over your own time, the constant physical discomfort. It grinds down your spirit. You might find yourself drifting into a detached state, your mind retreating from the unbearable reality, seeking solace in the rhythmic nature of your work, the absence of leisure, of personal time, of any opportunity for true rest or recreation leaves you perpetually exhausted, your spirit slowly eroded by the relentless demands of survival. It's like being stuck in a never-ending workout, but the only motivation is avoiding starvation, and there's no end in sight. A little-known detail about Viking settlements is the evidence of widespread dental issues. Skeletons from archaeological sites often show significant tooth wear, abscesses, and cavities, likely due to a coarse diet, lack of dental hygiene, and the constant use of teeth as tools, for softening leather. This would have caused chronic pain and contributed to overall poor health, adding another layer of misery to daily life. Imagine having a constant toothache, with no dentist or pain medication, for years. The threat of injury is ever present. A slipped axe, a falling log, a misstep on uneven ground. These can lead to broken bones, deep gashes, or permanent disfigurement. As we discussed in the last chapter, without modern medical care, even minor injuries can become life-threatening, turning a simple accident into a slow, agonizing demise. You learn to move with caution, to be constantly aware of your surroundings. But accidents are inevitable in this brutal environment, leaving you scarred, disabled, or dead. The academic debate still rages about the precise quality of life in Viking settlements and how much it varied across different regions and social strata. While archaeological evidence points to harsh conditions for the majority, some scholars highlight evidence of trade, craftsmanship, and social organization that suggests a more nuanced picture than unremitting misery, particularly for the elite. However, all agree that life was fundamentally challenging and precarious for most. The cycle of the seasons dictates your life, but it offers no true relief from labor. The scorching summer sun is relentless, while the cooler winter months offer only a slight reprieve from the physical demands, replaced by the gnawing cold and the constant threat of famine. The annual flooding of the Nile might bring a temporary halt to some field work, but it also brings new challenges to the construction site, requiring massive efforts to manage the water and transport blocks on the rising river, often on specially constructed canals. There is no true off-season, no time for rest or rejuvenation, only a relentless, unending cycle of toil, pushing you higher and higher towards the sun, and closer to your inevitable end. Even the moments of apparent relief or triumph are often fleeting, and come with their own costs. A successful raid might bring plunder and temporary wealth, but it also brings the risk of death or crippling injury, and the creation of new enemies who will seek vengeance. A bountiful harvest brings temporary relief from hunger, but it is quickly consumed, and the anxiety about the next growing season begins anew. There is no true, lasting peace, no genuine security, only a brief respite before the next challenge emerges. And as the sun sets on another endless day in the Viking settlement, casting long shadows across the fields and longhouses, you lay down your weary body, covered in dust and sweat, your muscles screaming in protest. You understand, with chilling clarity, how Viking settlements were really full of misery, especially when your life was defined by brutal labor and endless toil. It was not just a seasonal hardship, but a constant, gnawing demand on your physical and mental reserves, where every moment endured was a testament to your unyielding will. Your existence is a silent scream, echoing from the fields and workshops. A life consumed by the relentless demands of survival in a world where hard work was not a virtue, but a brutal, inescapable necessity. Your existence is a constant negotiation with pain, fear, and the overwhelming forces of nature and society. You are constantly striving, constantly enduring, constantly fighting for survival. There is no room for weakness, no opportunity for surrender. Your life is a testament to the sheer tenacity of the human spirit, its ability to cling to existence even in the face of relentless adversity. You are a survivor, yes, but your survival comes at a profound cost, leaving you weary, scarred, and forever marked by the hardships you have endured. You've battled the insidious, gnawing threat of famine, feeling your body waste away and your mind fraying at the edges as winter relentlessly consumed your meager stores. You've endured the cramped, unsanitary conditions of the longhouse and the pervasive threat of disease and death, those unseen killers that stalk every Viking settlement. You felt your life consumed by the relentless, back-breaking reality of brutal labor, from dawn till dusk, a constant demand on your physical and mental reserves. But even if you managed to survive the hunger, the cold, the illness, and the sheer exhaustion, there is an enemy far more volatile, more unpredictable, and often more personal that lurks in the heart of every Viking community: feuds and violence. In this harsh world, where justice is often a matter of personal honor and retribution, a single insult, a stolen cow, or a tragic accident can plunge your life into a terrifying cycle of vengeance, making every interaction a potential danger and every shadow a hiding place for an enemy. This pervasive presence of feuds and the constant threat of violence was a common historical fact in Viking society, often leading to bloodshed and instability within communities. And as the sun sets on another day in the Viking settlement, casting long shadows across the fields and longhouses, you lay down your weary body, covered in rough wool, your muscles screaming in protest. You understand, with chilling clarity, how Viking settlements were really full of misery. It was not just a collection of isolated hardships, but a pervasive, all-encompassing reality, where every moment endured was a testament to your unyielding will, and every day was a gamble with your very life, constantly shadowed by the cold, the hunger, the disease, the violence, and the demands of a harsh world. Your existence is a silent scream, echoing from the very stones of your longhouse, a life consumed by the relentless demands of survival in a world that offered little comfort and much despair. Well, that's our journey through what it was like to live in a Viking settlement, from the bitter cold of the longhouse, the cramped and unsanitary conditions, to the ever-lurking specter of famine and the invisible killers of disease. We've seen lives consumed by relentless labor, constant feuds and violence, and the constraints of social hierarchy. You wake one morning, not to the gentle chime of an alarm clock, but to a different kind of tension in the longhouse. The usual sounds of daily chores are muted, replaced by hushed whispers and wary glances. You learn, quickly, that a dispute has erupted between your family and a neighboring clan, perhaps over a boundary line shifted in the night, or a perceived slight during a recent gathering. Your heart pounds a frantic rhythm against your ribs, a drumbeat of pure dread, for you understand the chilling implications. In the Viking world, honor is paramount, and an insult, a wrong, demands a response. To do nothing is to show weakness, to invite further insult, to diminish your family's standing. It's like a neighborhood dispute that escalates into a full-blown gang war. But instead of lawyers, you get axes. And instead of property damage, you get dead relatives. You've experienced profound isolation, exposure to the elements, and a life governed by capricious gods. Ultimately, we've discovered that your life was a constant struggle, a long series of hardships and challenges. Hopefully, this story has given you a deeper, more authentic insight into what it really meant to live in a Viking settlement. Beyond the romanticized or simplified images that are often presented, the initial stages are often verbal. A war of words exchanged at the local thing, the assembly where free men gather to discuss laws and resolve disputes. You stand among your kin, listening as your chieftain or family elder presents your grievance, his voice firm, his eyes fixed on the opposing party. The arguments are heated, voices rising in anger, hands gripping weapon hilts. Tensions are always high. For a wrong word, a perceived insult, can quickly escalate a minor dispute into a deadly confrontation. You watch, your senses alert, ready to step back if the situation threatens to erupt into violence, knowing that the smallest spark can ignite a conflagration. Now, as the images of smoky longhouses, barren fields, and calloused Viking faces fade into the night, let your mind rest. Let the sounds of this story drift into your sleep, bringing you peace and quiet. It is late at night. If a resolution is reached, it often involves the payment of compensation, known as wergild, or man price. Every injury, every loss, every life has a set value in silver, livestock, or goods. The goal is to avoid further bloodshed by providing a financial settlement to restore balance to the scales of justice. But agreeing on the amount and ensuring its payment is often a fraught process, requiring skilled negotiation and a willingness from both sides to compromise. If the compensation is deemed insufficient, or if the guilty party refuses to pay, the aggrieved family has the right to seek vengeance. And this is where the true terror begins. And this is where the cycle of feuds begins. A grim, self-perpetuating spiral of violence. If a kinsman is killed, or a grave insult inflicted that cannot be settled by wergild, your family is honor-bound to seek retribution. This is not a matter of choice. It is a sacred duty, a deeply ingrained cultural imperative. You pick up your axe, sharpen your knife, and prepare for a deadly game of cat and mouse, where the stakes are life and death, and every shadow might conceal an enemy. You are drawn into a blood feud, not because you personally hate the other family, but because your family's honor demands it. A chilling obligation passed down through generations. The vengeance might take the form of a direct attack on a member of the offending family, an ambush on a lonely road, a sudden assault on their longhouse under the cover of darkness, or even a raid on their livestock. There are no rules of engagement beyond the unwritten code of honor, which often prioritizes retribution over fair combat. The goal is to inflict a wound, to take a life, to restore balance to the scales of justice, to avenge the wrong. But each act of vengeance only fuels the next. creating an endless chain of retribution that can span generations, consuming entire families and destabilizing communities. Imagine your family having a grudge against another family for centuries, passed down from great-great-grandparents, all because someone stole a sheep, and now you're legally obligated to kill their cousin. It certainly makes your family arguments seem trivial. Disease is a constant, terrifying threat in these cramped, unhygienic conditions. A simple cold can quickly spread through the entire household, turning into a deadly fever or a debilitating cough. Lice, fleas, and other parasites are rampant, their constant biting adding to your torment, driving you to distraction. Contaminated food or water can lead to dysentery, sweeping through the longhouse, dehydrating and weakening its victims until they waste away. Without modern medicine, even minor ailments can become life-threatening, and the close quarters ensure that sickness, once introduced, is almost impossible to contain. The fear of feuds is a constant shadow over your life, a pervasive anxiety that never truly leaves you. You must always be vigilant, always aware of who your family has wronged, and who might be seeking retribution. You learn to trust few outside your immediate kin, for every stranger could be an enemy, every distant figure on the horizon a potential threat. It breeds a deep-seated paranoia, a constant state of readiness for conflict, even in your own home. You might sleep with a weapon by your side, your senses alert to every creak of the longhouse, every rustle outside.